Dan Lanning, who we mentioned yesterday, just seemed beat. You know,
it's a long week. The calendar makes no sense. Having signing day the week of conference title games is one of the dumbest things you could possibly do.
There's usually great conversation every week, but yesterday, he sounded exhausted.
He did have a funny moment where Rob asked him
the quarterback
thing,
right?
and he was like, "You want me to put Dylan Gabriel in there on defense?" He was like, "Well, they never see that coming."
Well, and then I heard it as quarterback again when he said your defensive quarterback, but he may have been saying cornerback. But Lanning heard him like, I guess we're.
I think he was trying to say coordinator. I don't know if I've ever heard somebody call a defensive coordinator the quarterback of your defense.
I didn't know if he was talking about Bassa or. Anyways, I digress. Lanning heard it the other way again and was like, "Well, what are we doing?"
Yeah.
He just seemed tired.
He did.
But Lanning was talking about it. You can find the podcast, of course, at 1080thefan.com. He was asked about Penn State.
There's not a lot of teams that what they do offensively is very unique and different. So I don't think we've seen anybody this year that looked quite like them. Just a variety of formations, how they utilize their personnel. It's a little bit different.
We've also talked about Carter on the defensive line, Singleton coming back at the running back position. Tyler Warren is, just an absolute stud.
Mm-hmm.
They asked Dan Lanning about scheming against specific players. I believe this was the question. Basically, do you bracket somebody over Tyler Warren and you just single him out specifically, but in a way you kind of do? And they asked Lanning about that.
Well, I think you always want to be aware of where people are at when you talk about a team's strengths. What makes it harder about how Penn State does it is that guy plays so many different positions and moves around the field. So you can't just say, okay, I'm going to line up my best corner on Tyler Warren. Well, then he's lined up the next play at running back or quarterback in the backfield and catching a snap. So this doesn't work like that. And that's probably what makes them more challenging is that they move their personnel around a lot.
If Penn State and Aller are struggling, I really hope there's a play that Franklin has where Tyler Warren snaps it to himself,
throws it
in the air like we used to do as little kids.
Backyard. Here we go.
Runs under it. Oh my God! He's gonna
run a fade. Tyler, run a fade. He's gonna make a play.
How many touchdowns did you throw to yourself?
Oh, millions.
From ages 8 to 10, either in the street or in your backyard. Probably like 50 a season, right?
Dominant. There's nobody better backyard football than me.
Nobody
dominant
performances. Spiral to myself.
No, just everything was right on the money. Diving catches, never dropped the ball. Dominance.
I really do believe this. We'll have to see what the box score will tell us on Saturday, but I cannot imagine a world where Taj Lapoy and Dan Lanning and that defensive group limit him. Stop him? Probably not. Now, if he has a big game, that won't shock me either because he's a stud. But I just think if you kind of take that away, they don't have a whole lot offensively that is really troubling for Oregon, at least on paper. And
it's
what
not like
seen.
Ohio State where it's Jeremiah Smith and all these Abuka and Henderson, Junkins. Yeah.
Yes, there's not like that laundry list of guys.
Weapons up and down the field. I think it goes back to, though, him mentioning how you stop Warren, what I was talking about in the last segment, and that is when you allow them to be multiple in terms of what they can call, that's when it's really difficult because he's incredibly talented. And so if they're in a lot of 3rd and 2 situations, are you going to toss it to him? Are you going to run a little tight end screen? Are you going to line him up at the Wildcat? Are you going to hand the ball off to him? You can use him in so many different ways, and they do use him in so many different ways. That's where it's really incumbent on Oregon's defense to force them into those 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 situations because then you're not running Wildcat with Tyler Warren on 3rd and 8, right? They're going to try and throw him the ball. That's fine, but he's lined up somewhere. I can have a linebacker on him. I can have a safety bracketing him, and that makes it a little more challenging to get him the football, and then it's one-on-one on the outside, and you love those matchups with your corners in those spots. Lanning talked about this yesterday, too. And it's a blanket statement that you could write on any football game, but the big ones, it especially matters in terms of momentums and swings. Explosive plays are huge. And when Penn State has gotten into these games, you mentioned the Michigan game last year and what Aller did. Explosive plays are basically categorized as gains of 20 yards or more on one play.
Yes.
You know how many explosive plays the Penn State offense had against Michigan last year?
Well, I mean, based on Aller's box score, I'd say 0.
They had one. Katron Allen had a 34-yard run. That was the only one. Their longest reception of the game was a Tyler Warren throw of 19 yards. That was it. Against Ohio State earlier this year when they lost 20-13 without scoring an offensive touchdown. Remember, their touchdown was a pick 6 that Will Howard threw. they had a total of 3. Tyler Warren had a long run that set him up on that goal line stand. Remember that 33-yarder that set him up like inside the 5-yard line. Tyler Warren also had a 31-yard catch, and then Harrison Wallace had a 24-yard catch. They had 3 explosive plays the entire game. And so that is one of those advantages in an area that the Oregon offense has been able to live in big games, whether it's Dylan Gabriel throwing a little, slant to Tez Johnson, and he takes it 25 yards, or some of the deep shots down the field, or Jordan James breaking a run. I think they have a real big advantage in that category. And I think that's the one thing you want to keep you want to hold Penn State accountable there, because they have really struggled to create explosive plays in big games over the last couple of years. So don't let them have these big chunk plays offensively.
Speaking of big explosive plays, in just the 20-yard minimal criteria for explosive plays, Penn State has one more than Oregon on the season.
Interesting.
44-43. Everything else, Oregon obliterates them. 30 yards, they've got 7 more. 40 yards, they've got 4 more. 50 yards, they got 2 more. 60 yards, they've got 4 more. 4-0, by the way. So,
and I would point to the biggest game that they played in the advantage there. How many 20-yard gains did Oregon have against Ohio State in that matchup? How many bombs down the field? It completely swung the game, and Penn State could not do it against an elite
Stewart
defense.
had what, 2 touchdowns in that game? And
Tez had a bomb touchdown. Gabriel had a 30-yard touchdown run. They created explosives left and right.
And then you go just 10-plus yards, Oregon has 8 more on the year. So just picking up a first down, which doesn't count as explosive, but that's still, you pick up 10 yards. You're moving the chains. You're feeling good about it. So largely, Oregon is far more explosive just on the year, and I think some of that is, maybe scheduling opponents, all that. Not that Oregon's schedule was brutal, but
Tyler Warren had about 20 of those himself against USC, man.
He did.
It was a walking explosive play every snap against the Trojans.
Well, and I know Michigan's down. Michigan just beat Ohio State in Ohio State. You know who played Michigan and didn't play Michigan? So, there's we're splitting hairs on schedule stuff, because I don't think Oregon's schedule was all that difficult, but they did face Michigan, and so that's going to count for something.